What's up everybody, welcome to a new series on the channel. So we're going to be making a fully replicating multiplayer inventory system that will also be persistent, so everything saves and loads into the level if you close it down and open it the next time. So this is pretty much the finished project, and I'm going to walk through it and show the features that are in here, and then we're going to start working on it today as well. So we have different pickups in the map. If I come close to them, their name will appear. And obviously I can pick stuff up. So a newsfeed on the bottom right will tell me if something got added or removed from my inventory. And then I also have an inventory screen, obviously. So I can drop items into the world by just dropping them beside my grid panel, and then everything replicates to the client as well, as you can see. So the client is now able to pick up the engine that I dropped over here, and it will be in the client's inventory. And we also have crates that we can use to store items or take items from, and those will update real time between different players. So if two players are entering the same chest and they start moving stuff around, everything will update real time, so they won't be able to drag the same item and things like that. So that's pretty much what we are going to be making. So if I would close this down right now and reopen the level, then everything will be in the exact same place. So everything is persistent as well, as you can see. This will be as an extension on the multiplayer project that is currently running on the series, on the YouTube channel, and you can also use it in a separate project, so it's really up to you how you want to use it. If you want to put it inside the multiplayer project that's currently on the channel, it will fit quite nicely. It won't be too hard to make everything work in there. So yeah, that's pretty much everything in here. If you like what I do and you want to support the channel, please take a look at the Ko-fi page or become a member on the YouTube channel. You will get access to some premium channels in the Discord, as well as a YouTube membership badge and some exclusive downloads. And obviously I will be eternally grateful if you do. So without further ado, let's dive into the video and start making a multiplayer inventory system. So I've created a default third-person project, and this is what we're going to use as the base for our inventory. First of all, I want to migrate a few assets to make everything look a little bit better. So I'm going to use the Lyra starter game to grab a few icons. So this is the Lyra starter game project, and if I navigate to the UI folder and then add a filter for textures, then over here I'm going to select the keybind frames. So I'm just going to grab all three of them, small, medium, large. And if I scroll all the way down, we have an icon I want to use. That's from the Xbox One, so that's this one. So those are the four textures that I'm migrating from the Lyra project. So right click, asset actions, and migrate them into your project. Now let's make sure it's the correct one, and that should be. So that's good to go. And then I'm going to use a few meshes from the StackObot project. So that's also a free project from Epic that's on the marketplace. And I'm just going to use a few of the props over here. So I'm just going to migrate the entire folder and not bother with it. So let's go to the environment props folder and then right click, migrate, and just migrate everything into your current project as well. And now we should be good to go for our assets, and we can start setting up our first pickup object. So let's start creating the pickup items. So first of all, I'm going to create a new folder, and that's going to be the inventory folder. So everything is nice and organized, and in here I'm just going to create a new blueprint class, and that's going to be an actor, and we're going to call it BP pickup. And let's set this one up first. So if we open it up in the class defaults, we want to make sure that replicates is enabled. So this will actually replicate over the network. And then we're going to set up the components. First of all, I'm going to add a scene component, and that's going to be my root, and simply replace the default scene root. And then I'm going to grab a static mesh, and that's going to be the pickup mesh. So for this mesh, we want to set a few settings on the right side. So first of all, let's just assign a mesh for now. So I'm going to assign the player pickup core over here. And let's raise it up a little bit. So 30 units into the sky. Now we want to set the collision over here to be no collision. So select it over here, no collision. We do not need to generate overlap events, so we can also disable that. And then if we scroll down a little bit further, we want to make sure that component replicates is also enabled. So make sure you tick that one as well. And that should be pretty much all for the pickup mesh. And then we want to add a trigger as well. So let's select the root, and then we're going to add a box collision. So this is going to be my box trigger. And let's raise this up a little bit as well. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, so 50 by 50. And for the trigger, we actually need to create a new collision setup. So let's go to our project settings, edit project settings, so not plugins. And over here, we're going to create a new collision object and a new preset channel. So let's go to the collision over here. We're going to create a new object channel. So click new object channel, and this is going to be the pickup. And the default response is going to be overlap, and then accept it. And then for the presets, we can expand it over here, and we're going to call it something like pickup profile. So let's create a new preset, pickup profile, and the collision is going to be query only, and then the object type is going to be pickup, so that's the object that we just created, and description, so that's going to be the trigger for pickup items. And then we want to set everything to overlap, and for the trace types we can ignore the camera trace, and we should be good to go, so we can accept it over here. And now if we go back into our blueprint, we probably need to close it down and open it up for our new options to appear. Oh, we don't. So over here we have the pickup profile, so we want to select the box trigger and not the mesh, and set the trigger to the pickup profile collision preset. And that will also assign the pickup object type over here. And we need to make sure that we have overlap events enabled. So then we should be good to go for the trigger as well. And now we want to make sure that we can display a name above this item, and we need to create a widget for that. So I'm gonna go back into the inventory folder and create a new folder first. So that's going to be widgets. And in here, I'm simply going to create a new user widget. So user interface, blueprint, and then a user widget. And this is going to be my widget blueprint, something like pickup item name. And let's open it up. And we don't really need to do a whole lot in here. So we can simply add some text, and we need to make sure it's a variable. So let's give it a proper name first, so that's the text item name. And then on the top right over here, we're going to enable is variable, and we might want to shrink it down a little bit, so let's make it size 20, so that should be okay. Now let me take a quick look in my notes to make sure I'm not already screwing up. So we want to go into the event graph. And over here we actually only need one small event, so let's create a custom event, and I'm going to call it set text item name. And for this we're going to drag in the text for the item name and set the text. And then we can simply drag the variable onto the event, and it will create an input for us. So this is all we really need in here. Let's get rid of this stuff and then compile and save it. And then we can go back into our pickup and add this as a component. So let's select our root, and then we're going to look for the widget. And we have a widget component over here. So this is going to be the widget pickup name. And we need to set this up on the right side in the details panel. So first of all, the space over here, we're going to set it to screen space, and then for the widget class we can select the actual widget that we want to use. So we're going to use our pickup item name widget that we just created, and then we want to enable draw at desired size, so that should make it appear in the correct size. And then I think, So for the default visibility, we want to set it to false. So if we scroll down all the way, there should be visibility somewhere. And we want to disable that. So let me just look for it, visible. So rendering visible, and make sure that that's set to false by default. Now we want to raise it a little bit so it's above the pickup, so 60 or 70 units into the air, and that should be good to go. So we have the components pretty much set up. Let's create a structure and a data table so we can easily make different kinds of pickups. So if you have followed some of my other tutorials, you probably know that I am very fond of using structures and data tables. It's just a pretty easy way to set up different kinds of the same object. So that's what we're going to do over here as well. We're going to right click, go to blueprints and create a new structure. And this is going to be my s_pickup item info. And let's open it up. So in here we're going to define all the variables that are needed to create a pickup. So first of all, let's create a pickup name. And that's a text variable. And then we also want to add a pickup mesh. So that's a static mesh. Scroll down, static mesh object reference. And then I'm also going to add the pickup mesh scale. So in case I want to scale down the actual mesh. So pickup mesh scale, and I'm just going to use a float. And then I'm going to use a boolean to determine if I want to display the pickup name or not. So I'm going to call the boolean show pickup name. And this is going to define if the name above the item pops up in the world or not. So you can define per pickup if you want to use it or not. The next thing we need is a pickup mesh offset. So in case we want to give the actual mesh an offset to the actual origin of the pickup. And the last thing we're going to add in here is a HUD icon, so we know what to display in our inventories. And that's going to be a texture 2D. And this is going to be our structure for now. So let's save and close it down. And then we can right click and go to miscellaneous and create a data table. Now it's going to ask us to pick a structure, and we're going to pick the pickup item info structure that we just created. And this is going to be our pickup item info table. And in here we can simply set up all the pickups that we want to use. So I'm going to add a new row in here, and the first one is going to be the orb pickup, and that's going to be an energy orb. So the actual mesh is going to be the pickup mesh core, or player pickup core mesh, so this one. And then we can define some scales. So for this one, scale 1 is fine. Let's display a pickup name, and then for the mesh offset I'm going to use 30. So we just created it in the viewport, and I raised it 30 units into the sky over here. So the 30 is the mesh offset that we can define in our data table over here. So HUD icons, we're going to come back to that later. I have a few created, but I do not have them imported yet, and we're not going to use them this episode, so that's fine. So we can set up multiple pickups. So let's add 2 or 3 so we have something to work with. So I'm going to add another row, and this is going to be the fan pickup. So let's call it fan, and then look for the fan mesh. So this is a pretty big mesh, so I'm going to scale it down 0.3. That should work. And I do want to display the pickup name. And then for the mesh offset, let me see, we can raise it a bit further, so let's make it 50, and it should be good. And the last pickup we're going to add for now is the dish, so that's a satellite dish. So let's call it dish, and then look for the dish static mesh. So we're also going to scale this one down by 0.5 and then also show the pickup name. And for the mesh offset, I have it set to 40 in my example project. So there we go. So now we actually have 3 different pickups that we can use. So let's close down our data table and continue setting up our actual pickup item. And to do that, we need to go inside of the construction script. So first of all, we want to make sure that only the server runs this. So we're going to add a branch in here, plug it in, and we're going to check if we are the server. So everything on this pickup replicates. So as long as the server sets everything, all the clients should see the changes and they should be presented with the correct pickup item. So let me grab my example. We're going to add a variable, and that's the pickup or the item row name. And that's a name variable. And we want to make sure that we select instance editable and then expose on spawn on the right side over here. Then we're going to drag in our item info row name and we're going to look for a table row. So get table row. And in here we need to select the data table and we're going to select our pickup item info table. So let's plug it in and break the out row. And now we have all of the variables that belong to this item. So let's make sure that we set everything. The pickup name, I'm going to create a variable for that, and that's going to be replicated. So let's drag off here, promote to variable, pickup name, that's fine. And then on the right side, make sure replication is set to replicated, and we're going to plug it in. So that's good to go. Then we want to set our static mesh. So let's drag in our pickup mesh, and you can see by the little white dots over here, it's set to replicate as well. So make sure you have the component replicates enabled for the pickup mesh. Then we're going to set the static mesh, and we can simply plug in the mesh from the data table. Then we need to set the scale. So let's drag off the pickup mesh again, and we're going to set the 3D scale. And then pick the relative scale 3D, and we can right click, split the struct bin, and then we can simply plug in the float. And that should be good to go as well. Then we're going to create a boolean for the pickup name. So we're going to drag off here again, promote to variable, go pickup name, that's fine. And we want to make sure that this boolean is also replicated. So on the right side, set it to replicate, plug it in. And the last thing we need to apply is our mesh offset. So we can simply grab the pickup mesh and then set the relative location. That relative location, plug it in, and simply plug in the offset from the data table, and that should work. So this will make sure that when we execute the construction script, then all the variables from the data table will be applied to our pickup. So all we need to do is enter the name of the pickup in the item row name, and everything else will be handled for us. Now in event play, we want to do a few things. So let's go to the event graph, and in begin play, the first thing we want to do is make sure that we grab the item widget over here. So let's drag in the widget component, and we want to get the actual widget. So let's drag off here and get user widget. So get user widget object. And with this object, we can cast it to the actual widget. So we're going to cast to our widget blueprint pickup item name. And once we have this correct cast, we can call our set item text. So we're going to drag off the widget and set the text. And that's going to be set text item name. So that's the little function that we created a few minutes ago. And then we can simply plug in the pickup name from the variables. And we have our actual pickup name set up and good to go. So we're going to use an interface to interact with our pickups and containers. So let's set up an interface next. So an interface is just a pretty easy way to interact with actors without having to cast to them. So let's take a look at how we set it up. we're going to right click, go to blueprints and create a blueprint interface. And I'm going to call this my blueprint interface interactable actor. Oh, freaking really, BPI, there we go. So let's set this one up. We also only need to define a few functions in here, and what the actual function does is going to be implemented in the characters later, or in the actors later. So the first function we want to add is interact with actor. And this function needs one input, and that's going to be our character. So let's add an input, and that's going to be player character. And in this case, that's a third person character. So if you're adding this to another kind of project, make sure you pick your own active character blueprint, and that should be good. Next thing, click the little plus sign over here, create a second function, and it's going to be set item name visibility. So set item name visibility, and for this we need a boolean as input, and that's the new visibility. So make sure that's a boolean. And then the third function we're going to add is get interact hint text. So let's add a third function, get interact hint text. And for this we don't need an input, but we need an output, and the actual output is going to be the hint text, and that's a text variable. So we're not going to be using all three of these functions today, but just so we have everything set up and we don't have to keep coming back to everything. So this is our interface, and now that we have our interface set up, we need to implement it to our pickup. So let's open our pickup item and go to the class settings, and then on the right side over here you can see implemented interfaces, no interfaces. So we're going to add one, and that's our BPI interactable actor. And with the interface implemented, on the left side you will see the interface events over here appear, and if you double click them you can assign them. So we're gonna do that. So first of all, let's do the event interact with actor, and for now the only thing that we're gonna do is destroy the actor. So let's drag off here and destroy actor. So we're simply gonna remove the pickup if we interact with it for now. And the other thing we're going to implement, so we're going to get rid of this, is the set item name visibility. So let's double click that as well, and let's set it up. So what this does, it will show or hide the name above the pickup item. So first we want to make sure that we actually want to show or hide it. So we're going to grab the variable from the data table, and if this one is false, the pickup name will never appear. So nothing is going to be connected to the false bin. And then we can simply drag in our widget pickup item name and set the visibility, plug it into the true bin, and then the new visibility, plug it into the event, and that should be good to go. So those are really all of the interface events that we need, and now we can go set everything up in our character. So first of all, let's go into the project settings and create a new input so that we can actually interact. So open your project settings, go to input and create a new action mapping. So I'm going to call this one interact. Really interact. And that's going to be the F key on my keyboard. There we go. So now we can go into our third person character. So that's third person, blueprints, and then the default character. And in here we are going to set up a detection sphere that will actually display the names of the items. So let me grab my example project quickly. So if we have the root component selected, let's add a new component, and that's going to be a sphere collision. So we want this to be our interactable detection sphere, for example. Interactable detection sphere. So first let's make sure we set it up in the details panel. So we want to set the collision over here, and we want to have it set to, let me triple check. So that's going to be a custom collision. And then we want to set it to query only, that's fine. Object type world dynamic, that's good to go. And then we can ignore everything except for pickup. We want to overlap pickups and ignore everything else. So this sphere will only detect pickups. And then I'm going to increase the size. So let's scroll up a little bit, and I'm going to make this something like 600 units big. So every pickup that's inside of this sphere, the name will appear above it. So if we go into our event graph, the first thing we want to do is grab an event begin play. And we want to make sure that this detection sphere will only be on our local character, so only on the actual character that I'm controlling and not on the other instances that are on other machines. And the reason for that is that the HUD is also only local. There's no reason for other instances of my character to have a HUD because there's nobody that can look at it. So there's also no reason for other instances of my character to actually have this trigger. So what we are going to do is go to event begin play, and event begin play will execute on all instances of my character. And we want to make sure that only the instance that I'm actually controlling keeps the trigger. So what we are going to do is add a branch in here, and we're going to check if this is a locally controlled pawn. So look for is locally controlled, plug it in, and if that's false, we're simply going to delete the interactable detection sphere. So let's drag in the component and destroy it. So now after event begin play, only the local instance of my character will have the detection sphere and all other characters do not. So we're going to use that, and we're going to grab in the detection sphere and add overlap events. So scroll down, begin overlap, and let's also add the end overlap event. And then what we are going to do, if this sphere overlaps an actor, we're going to check if that actor implements an interface. So let's drag off here, drag off the other actor, and we're going to look for does implement interface. And we're simply going to test against our BPI interactable actor. So if this implements this interface, we know it's a pickup actor, and then we want to set the item name visibility. So let's drag off here again, and we're gonna set item name visibility, and make sure we set it to true. And then at the end overlap event, we simply want to do the same thing actually. So we're simply going to grab a branch, check if the actor that is not overlapping anymore implements the interface. And if it does, we can remove the item name. So we're going to plug this into the true pin again and set the visibility to false, and make sure that we do plug in the actor. So that should be good to go. So technically, if we place some pickups in the level and walk towards them, we should be able to actually see the names appear above them. So let's have a quick look if that's working. So let's go to the viewport and let's drop in a few of our pickup items. So inventory, BP pickup, and let's just add 3 of them for now. Now we do need to make sure that we set them up. So on the right side, if I have one selected, we need to enter an item row name, and that's going to be referring to the row names that we added in the data table. So we can actually use orb, fan, or dish. So let's add one of each. So the first one is going to be orb, and then the second one is going to be fan, and the third one is going to be dish. And now it should work. So let's have a little look. I'm gonna launch it, single player, standalone, that should be fine. And let's play. So we actually have 3 pickups in the level, and if I start walking towards them, you will see the name appear, and if I walk away from the name disappears. So that's actually working, and that should also work in multiplayer. So if I would grab 2 or 3 clients, then everything should still work. So let me double check. So right now, if I grab one of the clients, I need to launch in a listen server. So now actually only the client that walks towards that pickup will see the name, and the other clients will not. So there you go. So I'm actually spawning with the pickups inside of my detection sphere, so that's why the first time they didn't pop up. But you can see everything is working. Now let's make sure that we can also interact with them, and then we're gonna call it a day. So let's go back into our third person character, and for this we want to set up our character mesh to actually overlap our pickup items. So let me see. We need to set up the overlap events. So if we select our character mesh and we scroll down over here to the collision, we need to make sure that generate overlap events is enabled, otherwise this won't work. And then we can simply create overlap events. So if we scroll down, we have the component begin overlap, and we're also going to add a component end overlap for the mesh. And then all we are going to do, first of all, we need to grab a has authority node. So this will make sure that only the server pin will continue. So the authority is the server and remote are the clients. And we want to make sure that everything we do to the pickup is handled by the server. So first of all, we're going to make sure that only the server is going to execute this code. Then again, we're going to drag off and check if the other actor implements an interface. So does implement interface, and select our BPI interactable actor. And if that's true, then we're going to set this actor as our interactable actor. So we have a branch. We need to create a variable for this. I'm going to call it interactable actor. And that's simply going to be an actor. And we do not need to replicate it because we are going to make sure that only the server is going to handle everything with this actor. So we can simply drag it in, connect it to the true pin, and make sure that we set it to the actor that we just overlapped. And then if we stop overlapping the actor, we can simply, first of all, we need to make sure we are the server. So we're going to grab our has authority node. And then we can simply compare the other actor to our interactable actor. And if that's the same one, then we're going to get rid of our interactable actor. So plug this into a branch, plug it in here, and then we're going to set our interactable actor to nothing. So right now, if we add an input action for our interact event that we just created, so interact, and that's actually an action mapping. So action event interact. We do need to make sure that the server is going to handle this. This is an input event, and input events will only execute locally because the local player is the only one that has a keyboard or a mouse. So input events will always be locally, and we need to make sure that we pass this on to the server. So the first thing we're going to do is create a custom event and call this server interact with interactable. So interact with interactable. So that's a really cool name. There we go. And we need to make sure that we set it to run on server. And for now, I'm going to set it to reliable. And then we can simply drag off here. And first of all, we're going to do an isValid check. So we want to make sure that we actually have an interactable actor assigned. And if that's valid, then we're going to interact with that actor, and we can simply call our interface function. So let's call interact with actor, and behind it in brackets is message, and that tells you it's an interface message. So we're going to use this message function, and for the player character we can simply plug in a reference to ourself. And now if we press the interact key, all we need to do is call our server interact with interactable actor, and that should work. So right now if we stand on top of one of the pickups and we press our interact key, it should delete the pickup. So let's compile, save, and let's have a little look. So again, we have a 3-player game. So I'm going to walk backwards a little bit, walk forwards, and the names will appear. Now if I press interact, you will see the actual item disappears, and it also disappears for other clients and the server as well. So there we go, we have the base for our pickup setup. Now there is one or two small things actually that I want to do. First of all, let's go into the StackObot folder, and I want to make sure that the material isn't just a white glow. So I'm going to open up the material instance glow, and I'm going to change it to a little bit of a greenish glow, so everything looks a little bit more interesting. Save it, and that should be good. And then finally I want to move these two blueprints into the other folder that we created, so we don't have to keep switching around in between folders. So first thing, I'm going to go to other filters and enable the show redirectors filter. Now if I'm going to move this over to the inventory folder, and it will ask me if I'm sure I want to move the game mode. So yes, I want to do that. Now you see a redirector pops up, so that's why this filter is really handy, and make sure I always have it here. As soon as I see a redirector, I right click it and fix up, so that's gone. And now there is one issue. If we save this project and reopen it, the game mode will not be assigned, so let me do that quickly. So I'm back. I moved the game mode, I fixed up the redirector, and right now if we go into our project settings and go to the maps and modes, you will see the game mode disappeared from the settings. So we have to make sure that in here we actually assign it again, the BP third person game mode. And after you did that, everything is good to go, and now we have the game mode and the character in this folder as well. So we've made the first start for our inventory system. I hope you enjoyed the video. There's not really much exciting going on yet, but we have to start somewhere. So if you did like the video, please consider leaving a like or just drop in the Discord and let me know that you liked it. Thanks for watching everybody. Talk to you later. I'll be back soon for more.